What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Peak Nutrition Podcast. Today, we are getting in the Christmas spirit. Now, I don't want to be one of them wankers that gets into Christmas too early. That's definitely not what I'm about. However, I know the Christmas parties are starting. You might be having a few social events, catching up with your mates, the work parties, trying to not do anything stupid in front of your boss, all that jazz. So I wanted to give you some ideas to help you find a bit of a balance between enjoying yourself, enjoying the festivities, we'll get there eventually, but also still making some progress towards your health and fitness goals. Now, I want to go off a bit of a tangent to start with, and I always argue that December is not a good time to have a fat loss goal. I'm not saying it's impossible. This doesn't defy the laws of thermodynamics and calories in, calories out. It, of course, is possible, but I just think it's not a good focus because with all the distractions, with everything going on, you could well be setting yourself up for failure and then get demotivated if you don't achieve it. So what I'd encourage is to focus on your actual habits and your behaviors, your processes. And then if that outcome occurs as a byproduct, brilliant. But if not, we're still getting wins. We're still improving in certain areas. So yeah, I just don't like to frame December as a time to focus on fat loss. That was my little story. But let's get into some actual practical tips and things you can use in these next few weeks. So today I'm going to give you five tips and tricks that have worked with my clients in the past that I've used personally. I really think they strike a nice balance between that enjoyment and that health and fitness goal, a nice little sweet spot between the both of them. So behavior number one is something that we call snack pairing. So this is where whatever your indulgence is, say you wanted a chocolate or say you wanted some cheese, crisps, whatever it is, you take your desired portion of that. So it might be like 2 biscuits or a couple of Limp balls. And then what we do is try and turn it into an actual meal. So we'd add some protein and some fiber to it. So say if we use chocolate as the example, we'd take the chocolate, but then we'd also have some yogurt and fruit with it. So what this does, it honors your hunger, it honors your cravings. You get to eat the food that you enjoy, but you're only going to you're much more likely to only eat the amount that you actually want to, rather than if it is the chocolate, rather than going back and just keeping getting more and more. So the protein and the fiber help fill you up. And then we're indulgent from a place of fullness rather than using it to actually fill our hunger hole. So hopefully that makes sense. Number 2 is to nail your breakfast. I really think this sets a tone for the day, but it also gets us away from the temptation to start the day with some chocolate and mimosas. Not that I've ever done that. Not only that, you're setting the intention for the day and you're much more likely to then follow up with some other health-seeking habits and behaviors. In terms of actual choices, I'd definitely I'd go, similar to the step before, find something that's high in protein, plenty of fruit and veg for that fiber, that satiation. But definitely stick to the things, or not definitely, I'd probably recommend sticking to the things that you usually eat. So trying to get some kind of normality, some kind of structure, a bit of routine, rather than it just being that mindless grazing all morning. So things like your scrambled eggs on toast with some spinach, or your Greek yogurt with berries and oats, things like that. Number 3 is actually quite similar to that, and it's sticking to regular meal times. So even within those highly festive days like Christmas, Boxing Day, things like that, wherever possible, try and stick to a normal eating pattern. This is the times where you are likely to be hungry. And then if you kind of skip those, the chances are you're going to replace that with just grabbing whatever's most convenient. Whenever we're hungry, when we've got to that point where we're like, "Oh, bloody hell, I need something to eat," we're so much more likely to just grab those convenience options, the first things we can see. And if that is your indulgences, like your chocolate and your crisps, that is what you're going to eat. So if we can stick to our meal times as much as practically possible, this doesn't have to be perfect, but it avoids those massive peaks and troughs in our hunger that make overindulging more likely. You may need to be a little bit strategic about this, have a little think about what you've got on for the day and plan when you might want to eat around that. But however it works, I would just really encourage you to stick to your meal times where possible. Number 4 is something that I call the crowd it out method. Now, this isn't specific to Christmas, but it's a system that I use with my clients around their social events. And given how many social events are going to be coming up at this time of year, I think it is pretty poignant. So the crowd it out method is essentially where if you have a social event or a meal out or anything like that, we know that it's probably not going to be the most physically health-seeking choices, but that doesn't mean it has to define our day or our weekend. So what we do is surround it with plenty of choices that do prioritize your physical health. So things like going for a walk, eating your fruit and vegetables, making sure you get plenty of protein throughout the day. And what this does is it allows you to enjoy your social events without, like I say, without letting them define that day or the week or the weekend, sorry. But we're finding some degree of balance that we can still be making progress towards our health and fitness goals. Number 5, the last one, is a little bit different, but what is accepting that overindulgences will happen at this time of year. With so much temptation, so many different events, it's completely normal. Every single human is going to occasionally overindulge. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you lack discipline. It's just part of being a human being. And if you can just almost pre-warn yourself and say, look, there are going to be times where I'm going to overindulge, but the key what you want to focus on is to not let it spiral. If you start beating yourself up, telling yourself it is all about discipline and you're weak, you're much more likely to go into that, oh, fuck it, oh, screw it mindset, where you go, I've already eaten one biscuit, may as well finish the pack. Or at the worst case, we go, oh, I've had a bad day of overeating, I may as well start again in January. So what we want to do is, like I said, accept that there will be some overindulgences, but actually practice a bit of self-compassion. And I know this sounds a bit airy-fairy, but what self-compassion is reflecting on something you might not have been happy with and actually trying to understand why it happened. So if it was like a dinner where you got a bit carried away, you could say, oh, do you know what? I was having such a good time. I had a few more beers than I meant to. But the key with self-compassion isn't just being like, oh, I'll get away with anything. What you want to do is then have a solution at the end of that. Now, this is something I only learned about recently. I always felt self-compassion was a little bit like, oh, people just making excuses for things. But the key with self-compassion is that solution at the end of it. So you say to yourself, if I go through a similar situation again, what would I do differently? So that we're learning from each of these experiences. And then sometimes you might say, actually, I wouldn't have done anything differently. And this is still a win because then you're very accepting of what you do, you're at ease with it, and you're not going to beat yourself up and get into this downward spiral where you are all or nothing, where it's either perfect or there's no point bothering. So yeah, self-compassion is really important, and accepting that there will be times where you overindulge, and that's not a problem. So that is the 5 tactics. I'll just run through them again quickly. So we've got snack pairing, nailing your breakfast, sticking to regular meal times, the crowd it out method, and accepting that overindulgences will happen. Hopefully these are useful. What I'd really love is for you to share them with anyone that might need to hear this. I know plenty of people get stressed out by Christmas. They find it a bit conflicting between wanting to enjoy all those festivities, but also not wanting to feel like shit on January, thinking what has happened. So yeah, if you could share it with anyone that might be interested in it, I'd really appreciate it. And other than that, I'll speak to you soon. Take care.